The original Raido games on the PlayStation 2 were perfect candidates for a remaster, even compared to other JRPGs from developer Atlus like Persona and Shin Megami Tensei. This little spin-off series boasts a unique atmosphere and puts a refreshing spin on the Atlus formula even today. It's one of the few action games within the SMT franchise, and its stylized historic backdrop is practically like nothing else. At the same time, these two Raido titles left enough room for improvements that a remake could have addressed. Sadly, despite looking all shiny, the remastered version from 2025 took some very wrong turns, somehow leaving even more to be desired than in the original games. Again, Raido still stands on its own. In fact, the entirety of the SMT franchise has a very distinct mood, combining anime adventures with occult themes. Yet each entry and each spin-off also feels vastly different from the others, despite sharing the same core formula, which is capturing wacky demons to summon in battle and fusing them into even stronger creatures so you can gain an advantage by targeting the right elemental weaknesses of enemy demons. Unlike other monster collecting series such as Pokemon, this franchise isn't about endlessly expanding its roster of creatures for merchandise, but to take the concept into creative directions. Raido, for example, is nothing like the high school hijinks of Persona. It also doesn't rely on the company's trademark dungeons, because it's more of an investigation game between the battles. But the even bigger differentiator was, as already said, leaving turn-based battles behind for real-time control. It was actually a little ahead of its time despite not being very well known. Similar to Final Fantasy VII Remake, multiple decades later, it combines real-time action with traditional menu commands to change the tactics of your demons on the fly. Besides that, the historical backdrop of the 1920s and its wacky detective angle, including Sailor Moon cats and robots, also gives it a unique spin. You seldom see Japan in the interwar period, especially in games. I can't think of any other example except Stranger Than Heaven from the Yakuza team. But the game also retains its mysticism. It feels like a world shrouded in mystery because these weird and obscene demons are lurking everywhere behind the real world. It's also refreshing to see the art of the old franchise artist Kazuma Kaneko in HD, which had a distinctive style in which the facial features and the smoothly ironed fashion of the anime characters particularly stand out. On top of that, as is typical for the series, it has a vivid soundtrack which comes with butt rock and laid-back electronic music like you'd only find in Japan. Now, there's a fine line when it comes to making an HD remaster feel adequate. My preferred effort by Atlus has been Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD. It didn't get a fancy new coat of paint like the Persona Reload, but it didn't need that. It had a strong art direction that still pops with solid HD emulation. It's a hardcore dungeon crawler where too many quality of life changes could make it imbalanced. The remaster only tweaked what was necessary, making the graphics widescreen and giving it proper voice acting to enhance the atmosphere, and making Demon Fusion a little less convoluted without changing the core of the game design. For Raido, Atlus went much further and announced dozens of supposed improvements, of which many are welcome. Things like skippable cutscenes, voice acting, a sprint button, and even though it would dampen other titles, I think in this case, quick saves and quick travel are useful. Instead of random encounters, you see the demons on the field, which would have also been nice in Nocturne HD. But they didn't know where to draw a line. Raido actually had an interesting concept. As part of the detective work, it was not only necessary to question residents, but also to use the demon's abilities to read minds, sneak into restricted areas, or uncover invisible traces. Or at least that was the concept on PS2. But Raido Remastered is one of those games that are so afraid of gameplay friction and the idea that an old game couldn't possibly appeal to quote-unquote modern audiences that it almost removed the actual game altogether. A GPS system now meticulously shows you every step you need to make, similar to formulaic open world games. There's no need anymore to question different NPCs or investigate the surroundings, because all of the mandatory interaction points are now marked with huge icons in the right order. Ignoring a few small treasures that can be found, there's zero reason to interact with any other elements in the map or to check your detective journal. The game might now as well be a visual novel on autopilot, and the puzzles are too simple to compensate for the lack of exploration, especially as your cat sidekick tells you the solutions anyway. This is an awful trend in many titles, going just a little too far in holding players' hands since the dawn of the PS5 generation. Other Atlus games too, like Persona 3 Remake or Metapher ReFantazio, signal your next goal pretty clearly. However, in these games, it doesn't really distract that much, because there you still need to find your way through giant labyrinths yourself. There's a couple of slightly more complex dungeon areas in Raidu, but this was never the focus, it was the investigations. I'm not saying that the originals are perfect or that they couldn't be obtuse. Now, however, this essential part of the gameplay loop has been made irrelevant. This section, for example, where you need to question a couple of soldiers and find out how to light a cannon to sneak by, wouldn't be that complex in the past, but by pointing out each step in the right order, they literally take the game out of the game. It's a shame, because only a few weeks earlier, Capcom released a remaster of Onimusha 2, which, similar to Nocturne HD, has proven that just a few tweaks are enough to keep older titles engaging, and that their old school approach can even feel refreshing. Which brings me to another slight irritation. Raidu Remastered is a decent looking game, where they made the colors pop a little more and cleaned up the character models decently. However, while it retains the fixed camera angles of the past, the environments are rebuilt in 3D. This makes the camera more dynamic in some places, but overall it loses detail compared to the pre-rendered backgrounds. Admittedly, there are shots where the difference between old and new is very hard to spot. Still, the remaster of Onimusha 2 showed that static graphics can still look very good with enough finesse while adapting them into an HD format, while at the same time retaining the original mood much better. To be honest, even though I do not appreciate any of it at all, it didn't shock me that they would dumb the game down. What I didn't expect is that even the battles somehow don't really feel much better. No, this isn't nostalgia. I only played the original two Raidu games a few years prior. Battles have been redesigned to have 3D arenas instead of pre-rendered surroundings, which was already the case in the second game on PS2. But now Raidu is more agile than ever and can do lots of acrobatics. However, the fights weirdly lack impact. Because of half-baked hit feedback, attacks feel like hitting the air. Ironically, Raidu was less agile on PS2, but the hit feedback was much more satisfying, especially in the second PS2 game. Out of the available weapons, only the spear feels somewhat comparable. Many bosses have short platforming sections, which aren't bad, I guess, but also feel kind of janky. You don't pay for a full heal anymore, and the series has become a little too lenient when it comes to inheriting demon spells during a fusion, so within a short amount of time you'll have a team of demons which can tackle pretty much all weaknesses. And your team acts much more freely, immediately using the correct elemental spells in battle. This shifts the focus from tactics much more to the action, which again feels a bit shallow. Overall, Raidu Remastered brings out the worst aspects of the remake culture. In particular, the very wrong belief that any title older than 5 years is a broken relic and inferior to new products. Even before Onimusha 2, tons of other remasters, like Devil May Cry 3 or Castlevania, have proven that with only a few tweaks, a game can become timeless. Higher budget remakes like Metroid Prime, Shadow of the Colossus or Tony Hawk's Pro Skater had some of the highest review scores in their respective release years. But despite improving graphics on the surface, the gameplay and game design in these titles remained extremely faithful. Again, only introducing small changes. The strengths of these titles didn't age at all, which is why the biggest goal should be game preservation and making titles legally available again. Of course, there's nothing to complain about if developers return to forgotten games and polish them up a little too. In the same year of Raid Remastered, there's Final Fantasy Tactics HD, a huge classic finally available in HD with a few extras like voice acting. The new filter looks terrible, but it's optional, so hey, no harm done. Then there was the Mortal Kombat collection shortly after, bringing multiple titles back in a faithful state, but also honoring these games with new history videos and for the first time with an online mode for old fans and people curious about the history. But attempts to only bring back a known IP to drastically alter it in hopes of making this thing of the past a big modern hit is backwards. Remasters like Oblivion even pride themselves in keeping all that jank of the past. So, if a casual player is not interested in playing a 20-year-old Shin Megami Tensei Raido game, then it is what it is. And that person isn't the audience anyway, so why cater to them? If you don't think that people want to experience the original intention of a game, then what's even the point of reviving it? It's a shame because there was lots of potential in Raido, which has been squandered in this particular remaster.